how did our ancestors live differently? What was exactly different compared to how we're living right now?
It's a completely different environment. They were, for instance, moving. They were out walking on uneven terrain, exposed to the elements, eating more natural foods, not exposed to fluorescent lights. They were very much living in cycle with the sun. So there's a deeper connection with everything going on in nature and the individual's health. And what we have in our modern culture, I like to say humans are living in a human tank. We eat processed foods, we live under fluorescent lights, we're sitting in front of a computer all day, we're not moving as much as our ancestors did, we're not eating like they were, and we're certainly not living like they were when it comes to community. Our bodies are always adapting to our environment. So what's more important, what I encourage people to do is to move throughout the day. Set a timer, at least every 45 minutes and get up and go for a walk at least, and then move your body, get some blood flow. Body position largely impacts your hormones and how you see yourself and how others see you. What we have with that flexed posture, that slumped posture, what we know about that is that it negatively impacts your hormones. So your testosterone would go down, your cortisol would go up, so you're in a more stressed out state. It's a more fear-based state where you're thinking more fearful thoughts, feeling more fearful feelings. It impacts your confidence and your courage and your ability to do things. And when you're feeling a lot of those things, it's easy for depression or anxiety to come in.
As a serial entrepreneur, I'm always trying to evolve. Having great conversations with other high performers is one of the best ways to grow, not only in business, but also in spirit, health, and relationships. This is Svencast. Listen, grow, repeat. We are live with Dr. Chet Walding.
Hey, how you doing, Sven?
I'm doing great. I hope you're doing fine as well. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for joining me in this podcast here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So you're the co-founder of NativePath. You're a doctor of physical therapy. You're an holistic health and fitness coach, and you are yourself living what you preach, an athlete and a speaker. And your mission is helping people transform their life with better nutrition, eating, moving, thinking, and living. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So most of us entrepreneurs, we're really office workers. Like most of us were, like doing a lot of hours in front of the computer, most of the time sitting. Most of us are eating unhealthy, probably not drinking enough water. And you are talking a lot about that ancestral aspect of health. How did our ancestors live differently? What was exactly different compared to how we're living right now?
Yeah, well, it's a completely different environment, right? I mean, they were, for instance, moving. They were out walking on uneven terrain, inclines, declines, exposed to the elements, eating more natural foods, and not exposed to fluorescent lights. They were very much living in cycle with the sun. So there's a deeper connection with everything going on in nature and the individual's health. And what we have in our modern culture, I like to say humans are living in a human tank. We eat processed foods, we live under fluorescent lights, we're sitting in front of a computer all day, we're not moving as much as our ancestors did, we're not eating like they were, and we're certainly not living like they were when it comes to community and like living in a tribe and doing things together. So all those things add up to a very different environment that what we're seeing is in large contribution, this modern tank in large contribution to many of the diseases that we face today, like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, a lot of these autoimmune issues. We don't see them very long in the human spectrum. They only come on course about 100 years ago once we started to change our environment, specifically our food environment. So we feel that what we're trying to do, is get people back in harmony with their biology, to start doing what their genes are expecting of them, to eat the foods they're designed to eat, to move the way they're designed to move, and live the way they're designed to live. And then when that happens, a lot of the symptoms that most people struggle with, like trying to lose weight or poor energy or, depression and things like that, a lot of these things start coming back online. And the human can be feeling much better when they just obey that simple law.
Okay. And so you're saying essentially all these different symptoms that look very different. I mean, if you compare diabetes and depression, and you're throwing that all into one basket basically and say the root cause is basically the same.
It's a good place to start. It's the environment. So, for instance, you may have heard of orcas, right? Or orcas and their floppy fins. Right? This started happening all around the world, and they're like, why are orcas having floppy fins when they're at SeaWorld? And what they found was that it's really for three reasons, right? And one is the orca's always swimming in a counterclockwise direction, so there's more force on one side of the fin than the other. And the other is the food they were giving that orca. So it was very low in nutrition, very high in toxicity. So it changes the actual structure of the fin, so it's weaker. And then they're not swimming to great depths like they would in the ocean, right? So they're only swimming in shallow waters. So that environment is largely contributing to the floppy fin, but also the problems of depression and anxiety that these orcas were experiencing. Because none of that happens when an orca is out in nature, when it's swimming with other orcas, eating the foods that orcas are supposed to be eating, and in their natural environment. So we want to bring awareness to that, and then start moving people more in that direction to get back in harmony with their biology. And what we see is, like a lot of these problems that we're going after with quick fixes, with pills, with things like that, these symptoms, if we get to the root of the problem, which is really the environment and how the human relates to the environment, we can start to fix a lot of these issues, right?
Okay, and how much, let's say, would you recommend as like a time investment? Because like if we have office jobs, we obviously cannot like live the life of a Stone Age person, right?
Yeah, well, that's a big project that I started working on when I first started this. Was how a human relates to their office job, right? And sitting in front of a computer all day. Because what we're doing is we're flexing all the time. We're rounding our spines, our necks are moving forward, our shoulders are kind of rounding, and our knees are bent, right? And over time, the body starts adapting to that position. And we start to have poor postures, and it results in neck pain and shoulder pain and back pain. So what we want to do, what I encourage people to do, is to move throughout the day. A lot of times in our culture, we think, oh, I'm just going to sit in front of my computer for 8 hours a day, then get up and then go work out, and that's all fine. But our bodies are always adapting to our environment. So what's more important, what I encourage people to do, is to move throughout the day and set a timer, at least every 45 minutes, and get up and go for a walk at least, and then move your body, get some blood flow. And ideally, you're doing some movements within that 2 to 4 minute period where you're offsetting the negative positions that you're putting yourself in when you're sitting. So if you're always flexing your back, or let's say you're hunching all the time when you're working, when you get up and move, that's a good time to start moving your shoulders backwards and to extend your mid back and go the other direction to compensate the situation, or really the position that you're in. So there's lots of ways that you can incorporate movement, better habits throughout your day.
I see. So so the most important thing is to get moving on a regular basis and not just to sit there. For example, I work a lot when I'm not traveling. I work on a standing desk, so I try to stand as much as I can. Does that also help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, standing is great. I was going to say, ideally, you're changing like 3 positions that I recommend. So one is obviously sitting in a chair that we typically do most of the time. The other standing. And the third one would be if you can spend some time on the floor, with cross-legged, with your hips a little above your knees, and then you have your computer placed on something that's right in front of you. Those are all better positions to be in throughout the day, kind of going from one to the other, but also movement. Movement really is the key. That's going to do the most in terms of offsetting the negative effects of sitting.
Okay, so that will help with a lot of pain. But how about the depression aspect? Does that also influence? Is that also influenced by those things?
Yeah. So there's been some interesting studies where there was a Harvard professor named Amy Cuddy. She did a great TED Talk, and what she found is that your body position largely impacts your hormones and how you see yourself and how others see you. So what we have with that flexed posture, that slumped posture, what we know about that is that it negatively impacts your hormones. So your testosterone would go down, your cortisol would go up. So you're in a more stressed out state. It's a more fear-based state where you're thinking more fearful thoughts, feeling more fearful feelings. It impacts your confidence and your courage and your ability to do things. And when you're feeling a lot of those things, it's easy for depression or anxiety to come in. And what we know also is that the opposite happens. When you put yourself in a good position, when you're aligned, when your posture is where it needs to be, your neck, your ears are in line with your shoulders, you're tall, you're strong, the positive impact happens on your hormones. Your cortisol goes down, your testosterone goes up, your confidence and courage goes up when you put yourself more in a power position. So it's important to know that when we're slumping in front of a computer, when we're texting over our phones with the forward head, when we're sitting on the couch, when we're driving in our cars, our bodies are always adapting. So our movement protocol and what we're trying to do should be to restore our posture and get us back in a good position. And when that happens, there's lots of positive chemical changes that happen. Happiness, productivity, courage, confidence, all those things start to come online.
Also, I really feel sorry for truck drivers.
I know. I mean, yeah, that's a bad environment, right? They're sitting all the time. They're stopping at truck stops and eating a lot of processed and refined foods. So it can still be done, though. I mean, if they take breaks and get out and do the right stretches and the right movements, and then eat well, they can set themselves up for a win.
Yeah, and sometimes the driving cabins are also quite high up, so they could like at least get some movement going. That could help.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the body is like codependent on so many things, like that your muscles and what you do influence your hormones, and that influences your brain, and vice versa. It's all like a big system, and so it's good to have that holistic view on things. And this is very interesting, and a lot of things are just attributed nowadays to it's your age. Like that's normal in your age. Oh, you're feeling tired all the time. Yeah, you're 45. That's why, and something like this. But it's such a wrong perception quite often.
It's perception of conventional healthcare. You know, you see it like when you drive down the street. It's like, does heart disease run in your family? You know, it's trying to portray you as a victim, and there's nothing you can do about it. And on the surface, it may look like heart disease does in fact run in your family because maybe your dad has it, your mom has it, your sisters, your uncles, whatever. But like, we have to look a little bit deeper. Like, does heart disease run in your family, or is your family just sitting around the same table, you know, eating the same foods, thinking the same thoughts, moving the same way? Yeah. And all of a sudden, it does look like heart disease runs in your family, but the family's not running. The family's not doing anything, you know? So we want to get away from that victim mindset. There's nothing I can do about it. It's my genetics. You know, we want to empower people to start to change their environment and take positive habits to feel better, because that's what everybody wants, right?
Yeah. I think that's not easy nowadays, because nowadays you're supposed to not breathe freely, so you're supposed to wear a mask, ideally, like even indoors. In a lot of places in the world, also outdoors. You shouldn't be in a tribe, what you just described. You're supposed to be isolated and socially distant. You're supposed to not to move, because you should stay indoors, and indoors, like you cannot take walks, maybe like an orca around your table or something. But I think probably not many of us are taking walks. So you're not supposed to get a lot of sunlight, because you're supposed to stay indoors. That's really, let's say, fascinating to me, like all these health tips by the governments and media. It's quite the opposite of what I expected to be, like strengthening our immune systems. Right. But then this magic.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And it's all, and there is a scientific consensus, like all the scientists of the world are in consensus that, or let's say those who are presented to us are in a consensus that this is the best thing to do. Next, of course, to getting what I want to call it, let's say, the magic pill that we have to take like annually or every 6 months to be immune.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You know, you bring up some like great points that I don't feel like they're being talked about enough with the global conversation with what's happening in the world. So I heard an interesting stat from the CDC that of all the people who have died with COVID, only 6% of them just had COVID, right? The other 94% had an average of like 2.4 other comorbidities like heart disease and diabetes and cancer and things like that. So really, to me, it's speaking to like the quality of our immune system. It's going down. We're more vulnerable than we've ever been before as a consequence of this poor environment, and it's an interesting thing because we're looking to our health professionals that are on the TV wearing these white coats with lots of, diplomas behind them. It looks all fancy, but they're kind of ignoring a big piece of the puzzle. When I was an intern as a physical therapist, my first internship was at this hospital in Houston, Texas, that was world renowned for its treatment in heart disease. So best hospital in the world for heart disease. And on the second floor of this heart disease hospital was a McDonald's. And I would take patients. I would take patients who would get out of heart surgery and they would ask me to wheel them down to McDonald's. And I would go down there and I would see other patients and I would see other doctors and nurses wearing white coats. And I was like, what, does no one else see what's going on here? It's like we're a dog biting its own tail, and there's lots of money to be made with these procedures and these pills. But like, we have to wake up and realize that like taking personal responsibility and eating the foods that we're designed to eat, moving the way we're designed to move, and living the way we're designed to live is ultimately what's going to get us back into harmony and build up our immune system. We have to look at what the root issue is.
I think McDonald's is also vaccinating people and giving them a free burger or something if they get the jab, right?
Yeah, I see that all the time, and I see you can get rewarded for donuts if you get a
with
vaccine.
Donuts. Yeah, like, so donuts are super helpful.
Yeah. So those are the messages, and that's what we have right now is people taking off their mask to drink some Coke and to chase a donut, and then we have a lot of shaming. Like, why don't you wear your mask? Why don't you do what I'm doing? Why don't you get vaccinated? It's like, hold on, we have to like stop and look at what's actually doing this, what's causing all of this, and if you're gonna say this is good to wear a mask and get vaccinated, you'll also do your part to get healthier and do your part in that way and not become such a liability. Two parts of it.
Yes, because no one ever. This is just my perception, but no one ever really talks about the immune system in that whole equation. It's just about mask and jab. It's never about, hey, how healthy do you live in general? How much fresh air are you getting? How much vitamin D are you getting with K2? How much movement, what kind of emotions do you have? Like, are you living in constant fear, which basically increases cortisol levels and stress in general? Like no one ever talks about that. It's just about like following these, let's say, guidelines. And I'm wondering, like, I'm just wondering, like, why no one ever brings that up, like, at least in the media.
Yeah. Well, I think they do, but I think that they're getting censored really quickly, so it's a really sensitive thing right now where if people are speaking up and saying kind of what we're talking about here, they could get their channel taken down. I've seen that a lot, on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, just, it's an interesting thing. And I've seen this a lot with conventional healthcare. There's a lot of money to be made with selling products, with selling pharmaceuticals, and people's livelihoods are depending on that, but it's not necessarily in the best interest of the person, of the human, because it goes back to that environment and what we're living in. We have to address that first, and changing the way we eat food in our culture. The agriculture has to change. There's so much that I think we're shifting into right now, but it really starts with like the individual making positive changes for themselves, and starting with, drinking a big glass of water in the morning, going outside, getting some sun, putting good foods in your home, taking time to feel gratitude and love yourself and check in with your friends. Like these are basic things that are the least things that make the most difference in terms of improving the immune system and happiness and the quality of life.
Yeah. The whole healthcare system is just designed around trying to get rid of symptoms or trying to numb down symptoms versus trying to, let's say, optimize the root cause or solve the problem with the root cause.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't Yeah, if you don't get any movement, like, and then you just take painkiller instead of getting movement. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
very interesting.
if someone gets healthy and they're no longer dependent on medications, they no longer need surgeries, then that could put the medical industry out of business. They lose a customer, right? So it's not necessarily,
Yeah.
there's a kind of a conflict of interest in terms of improving the long-term value of patients. You know, they don't have an interest necessarily in keeping someone healthy and not dependent on these pills.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a program that's called Native Body Reset. I'm really curious, how does that work and what exactly is to be reset there?
Yeah, so it's a 30-day commitment of eating quality meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Essentially, it's a paleo diet with whole food, and there's a lot of ways to individualize it according to you and your biology because everyone's different. But the whole
Yeah.
intention is to improve your digestion, decrease your inflammation, balance your blood sugar. And when you do that, it is like that shotgun effect. Like someone could go into the 30-day reset and say, I want to lose weight, or someone else could say, I want to fix my blood sugar issues, or someone else could say my digestion's bad or my skin's bad. All of them essentially doing the same program, and all of them see positive results of that because of the things I'm talking about. They're getting the body back in harmony with its what it's designed for. So that's a program we have people go through, and the changes that they see in 30 days is incredible. Like anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds of weight loss, looking completely different, energy going up, sleeping better, digestion improving, all because of the basic changes they're making specifically with the way they're eating. So it's also moving away from gluten, grains,
Yeah.
conventional dairy, toxic fats, like all those things that are in most of the foods that we're eating nowadays that are compromising our immune system. We're just having you eat whole real food the way your body expects it.
Yeah, I think inflammation is really a big problem, and I think most of the people are not aware enough of that because, like, like if you have inflammation anywhere in your body, it kind of affects your brain. So your brain is a little bit more foggy if you have it, and most people have like chronic inflammation, so they feel like, okay, this state is kind of normal. But at the same
Right.
time, even for me, I think I live fairly healthy. But even for me, for example, I have like a weird pain in my wrist here, in my left
Uh-huh.
wrist that I got. Like I work out, I do Muay Thai and boxing, and so like 7 months ago, I just hit the pad in let's say in a wrong angle, and ever since I have like a weird wrist pain. And so I think it's inflammation, but it's very hard for me to get rid of it, even though I believe I do all like most of the things right compared to normal people. So I eat clean, I eat organic, I avoid. I'm pretty much on a keto diet. I avoid like processed food. I drink a lot of water. I get a lot of sunlight, but even then, I believe I'm pretty inflamed. So what
Yeah.
would you advise to someone who's like already living fairly healthy? Um, to yeah, how would you address that if you were me?
So in your case, what it sounds like is when you initially had that injury, you strained something and it resulted in scar tissue afterwards. You probably had some
Hmm.
inflammation there initially, but the inflammation as far as the acute phase is gone. There may be some chronic inflammation left, but when I hear
Hmm.
7 months or something like that, that to me sounds like you have some scar tissue still there, and you need some movement in a specific direction under a certain load and
Uh-huh.
doing it repetitively in order to fix that. So like there's lots of great wrist stretches that you could do with flexing your wrist, extending your wrist, rotating your wrist
Mm.
to help improve it. I can show you some things. I have a video of like wrist stretches that would really help you and open up your wrist.
Hmm.
But to me, that what it sounds like is not so much an inflammatory issue. It's more that you need
Uh-huh.
to move it in a certain direction in order to restore the normal range of motion in your wrist.
I see. How do you think of autoimmune diseases and allergies? Like, how's that related? Is this also like a
Hmm.
lack of movement, or is it more like a nutrition deficiency or eating the wrong foods, or what do you think about that?
Is so. So most autoimmune issues all originate in the gut, right? A compromised intestinal lining. So our gut is really responsible for our immune system. And it's also where, when it's working properly, the intention of the gut is to break down your food, absorb all the nutrients and vitamins and minerals from your food, but it's also to eliminate toxins and things that the body should be disposing of. So in our culture, we're eating a lot of foods that compromise the gut lining itself. You can think of the gut lining as like a hose with water going through it. And when we eat foods that compromise the gut lining, it's like you're poking holes in the hose, and you're allowing fluid, in this case foreign proteins, to get into the bloodstream when they should be proteins that should be discarded. So foods like gluten, gliadin, a lot of these toxic fats like safflower oil, canola oil, the foods that are in our modern system, a lot of those foods essentially poke holes in our intestinal lining and allow foreign proteins to get inside of our bloodstream. And when that happens, the body, it's like enemy crossing the boundary. It thinks it's under attack all of a sudden. An autoimmune issue is when the body starts to attack itself because of a compromised gut system. So if you have an autoimmune issue, the first thing you have to do is to stop eating foods that compromise the gut. And that's largely the foods I was talking about, like grains, gluten, conventional milks, toxic fats. Those are the big issues. And you want to start consuming foods that help seal the gut lining and improve that. So that's where collagen, bone broth, things like that can come into play. And that way you improve the function of the gut. And we see a lot of autoimmune issues go away without medications when people do that protocol. That's the protocol we talk a lot about in the 30-day reset.
Oh, nice. So you're taking this into account with 30-day reset. That's pretty amazing. And do you think like within 30 days you can have like all this results? Like, isn't that like too short or?
Well, it's different for everybody, but what we're trying to do is get people a buy-in. You know, if we say like do 90 days or a year, it's a little overwhelming, but 30 days or even sometimes people we can just get them to notice a change in a week. I mean, the important thing is we get people to notice that they made improvements because of the changes that they chose to make, right? Like there's an analogy that I always talk about with a room of strong perfume. So if you ever imagine like walking into a room of strong perfume for the first time and you walk in and you're like, whoa, this is like really strong. I smell this. It's so strong. And you look around in the room and you ask other people, like, do you smell that? And they go, what are you talking about? I don't smell that. Because they've been in the room so long, they've become desensitized to it. And if you stay in that room for much longer, you're going to become desensitized as well. And what we have is people who have grown up since they were children in a proverbial world of strong toxicity, of strong perfume. So the 30-day reset is saying, hey, let's just get you out of this world of toxicity. Let's get you back in harmony with your biology, eating and moving and living the way you're supposed to live. And then it's like, whoa, I feel different. I have fresh air out here. It's better. I want to keep going. So we want to inspire the person, empower the person to keep going with their own health journey. It's kind of what we mean by NativePath. You know, it's one step, then the other, then the other, then the other. It's not a quick fix. We're going for lifestyle changes and a perspective change in terms of how the human can change their environment to feel better and perform better and be happier.
I see. What do you think about like this discussion between animal foods versus vegan? Do you think that it's an individual choice, or do you think like one should approach this in general? Like you were talking about bone broth and stuff. That doesn't sound very vegan. What do you think of veganism personally?
Yeah, I think everybody's different, for sure. When I first got into all of this, I studied a lot of Weston Price. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was a dentist, and at the beginning of the 20th century, he went all over the world looking at indigenous cultures, people that were eating their native diets, and he was fascinated because he would witness these people eating native diets with perfect health, like straight teeth, no problems with reproduction. They were happy, they were healthy, they didn't have any of the diseases that we started to see in our culture at that time, like start to pop up, like heart disease and diabetes and obesity. but he never found any vegan cultures. You know, he found people eating more protein than others, and it all depended on where they were on the globe. So people that were closer to the equator were eating much more vegetables and fruit, and people that were closer to the Arctic or more north or far closer to the poles would eat more meat and more fat. But that none of them had, you know, sugar or toxic fats or grains or anything like that that was problematic to the body. So I think everybody's a little bit different. I think we go through phases where we're more dependent on meat than not. But to me, you know, it all comes down to giving the body what it needs. And I do believe the body does do best on animal-based protein. It's just it's the complete proteins, and I see people performing better in that way. But having said that, I do better with meat and fat. My wife does better with much less meat and much less fat and more vegetables. So everybody, I think, is different, and it comes from like our origins, where our ancestors were located on the globe. I think can really dictate what's going on. And I also think it's somewhat seasonal. So in the wintertime, when it's colder, I think our bodies naturally move towards more protein and fat. And I think in the summertime, when it's hotter, I notice my body for sure craving more fruits and more vegetables and less heavy foods. So I think there's a seasonal component to it. I think there's a genetic component to it. But in my opinion, it's everyone does best, in my experience, with some animal-based protein. A lot of times people go on a vegan diet and they see huge improvements, but I think the context, it needs to be taken into consideration. If this person's eating a standard American diet and with lots of crap in their food, and then all of a sudden they eat a vegetarian or vegan diet and they're like, I feel so much better. Of course, of course you do. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for you. So you're moving in the right direction with whole foods, but it may not be the best. And I think this conversation between, you know, vegetarians thinking one way or paleo or keto people thinking the other, I think actually they need to get on the same page with what they do agree about, which is whole, real food, organic food, grown in the same way, and not spend so much time making the other wrong. I think we should just focus on what we do agree on.
Have you seen the movie? I think it's a Netflix documentary, The Game Changers.
I've seen Game Changers, seen What the Health. I mean, I always listen to it. It's always super compelling. You know, I listen to all the podcasts about the debates back and forth. You know, it's just when it comes to my own experience with working with people, how I feel, how I notice the people I'm working with feel. People typically feel better, in my opinion, with quality animal-based proteins.
Yeah, have you seen the Joe Rogan episode and with the discussion between Chris Kresser and James Wilk?
Yes,
it's very interesting, and
James was well prepared for that. I mean, I give him massive credit. Like, he came so prepared, and he was very convincing. And Chris was not prepared for that level of attack.
No.
You know.
Yeah, I think James does a great job, and I'm trying to figure out whether I should eat like vegan or animal based because I understand both sides. For example, I'm originally a dentist as well, and our teeth look really much like, let's say, a plant eater. Like, our teeth are not very much designed like someone who can digest animals. But at the same time, I have a lot of trouble digesting plant protein for some reason. Like when I eat like lentils or like the usual stuff, I really get bloated and stuff. So, and I don't have that same problem when I eat animal protein. So I'm like, a bit undecided.
Yeah, and I think it's always good to do a self-test. You know, do 30 days of eating whole food vegetarian diet, and then do 30 days of eating, say, like a paleo or keto diet, and then just see how you feel. And it's totally okay if one works better for you than the other, but it's important for you to know, because, like I said, everybody is totally different.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you said, don't compare like a standard American diet where you eat like really shitty meat from McDonald's, or if you can even call, I cannot even call that meat,
Exactly.
Like versus like a healthy vegan diet that just consists of organic fruits and vegetables. Like, of course, you'll feel better. However, you could develop some deficiencies for some nutrients that you might find in animals. And I'm thinking especially about collagen. Can you elaborate a little bit more on collagen and how much collagen one should take, and if you go shopping for collagen, because there's many different collagen products, like what to look for?
Yeah, collagen is basically like our leading front end product that we work with, and collagen is the most abundant protein in the body, right? And it's responsible for making up what I would say the structure of your body. It's responsible for your hair, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones play a large part of collagen. Your gut that I mentioned is largely made up of collagen. And our ancestors, they would get plenty of collagen in their native diets because they would eat nose to tail. They would eat all parts of the animal. But in our modern culture, we're not getting near enough collagen, especially compared to what our ancestors were doing. I mean, you can make homemade bone broth, but it kind of stinks up the house and does all that. But so it's important to start supplementing with collagen because I think right around the age of 30, our natural production of collagen begins to decline, right? And that supplementation with collagen is super important. But collagen's fascinating because it has an intelligence behind it that's pretty, I would say, magical in my opinion. Like they've done studies where they inject rats with collagen, and these are rats where they'll go in and give them an injury of some sort. And what they'll do under imaging is that they'll see that collagen, it doesn't just go randomly all over the body. It specifically goes to the injured site. So it kind of knows where to go. There's an intelligence behind it.
Really?
It's kind of like it's pretty fascinating. So, if you're someone who is looking to overcome an injury or improve your digestion or improve your skin or hair or tendons, anything like that, collagen is an excellent protein to get. But like you mentioned, like not all collagen is equal. There's collagen that comes from chicken. There's collagen that comes from fish. There's collagen that comes from cows. And there's many different types of collagen. What we find is that the best collagen is coming from really good sources, from cows, type 1, type 3, cows that are eating, this is from the bovine hide of cows, but cows that are eating grass, cows that are drinking water and roaming fields and getting sun, not cows that are on a feedlot, living in dirt in close quarters with other cows that are fed grains and given hormones and antibiotics. That radically impacts the quality of the collagen and how well your body will absorb it and get use out of it. So we find the best results with type 1 and type 3 grass-fed collagen. It's from the bovine hide. But yeah, we recommend that to all our customers as a foundation.
Okay, and what do you think about vegan collagen? That's from algae, for example.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to it typically lacks a lot of the important amino acids that are going to give the benefit of what we're looking for. So it'll improve, but it's not necessarily going to be as well received or absorbed as, say, type 1 and type 3 collagen from the bovine hides of cows.
Okay, I see. And I've read that vitamin C also plays a role in, let's say, for optimized use of that collagen that you take in. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, vitamin C, magnesium, I think even vitamin D, all of those are good things that will help improve the absorption of collagen. So those are things that are also good for your immune system. But yeah, definitely recommend vitamin C, vitamin D, and magnesium as ways to, it's kind of like collagen boosters in a way that help you absorb the collagen.
And how much collagen should I take?
It depends on your age. I think for most people between the age of like 30 to maybe 30 to 45, we're typically around like 10 grams a day. But the older you get, the more you typically need. And we like to recommend a loading phase. So if someone's over the age of 50, it's more like a recommended dose of 20 grams a day. And if you're just starting, and if you're over the age of 50, it's probably more like 20 to 40 grams a day for like 2 to 3 weeks. So we have some articles on nativepath.com where we can kind of individualize things for you a little bit and talk about how much collagen you really should be taking per day. But yeah, at least 10 grams a day somewhere between 10 and 20 is a good amount.
I see. Thank you. So it's interesting. Your business is focused on collagen because you think it's the most important thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you do, like what your business is about, like where your focus is and why, why it's focused on collagen?
Yeah, well, collagen is a good entryway into our philosophy and the way we're talking about health. So, getting the human biology back in harmony with nature is what we're trying to do. And collagen is a great first step with that. Taking someone who is still maybe sitting in front of the computer, not eating good foods, well, we can say, hey, here's the least thing you can do that may make the most difference in terms of how you feel. Because your body's going to come online after that. And then we present this story of like what we're doing here is giving your body something that it already expects. Doing what your genes are expecting of you is a good philosophy on your health. So let's start with collagen. And after that, we have, say, the 30-day reset or different supplements to decrease inflammation or improve your heart health, your cognition. But all the whole intention behind the products and the programs of what we're doing is to get the body back in harmony with its biology and to do what your genes are expecting of you.
I see. Thank you. So how can people reach you if they want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, and maybe getting consulting by you? And
yeah, so a great place to go is NativePath.com. We have so many great resources on there. I have a breathing course. I have a movement course. If you have something hurting with your neck or your shoulder, or your back or your knee or whatever, like I have videos and programs on that. So that's a good place to go. We also have a private Facebook group. You can just look up NativePath and you'll find that. And the community is a great place to get in touch with me. I'm always doing Facebook Lives so I can interact with you. I'm not doing consults necessarily right now, but I always interact with our customers. That's a great place to go. Lots of great resources in the private group too.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm very curious about the topic of coffee. What do you think? Is coffee healthy? Is it unhealthy? What do you feel about that?
I think there's a tipping point. I think it's all about the dose and also the quality. I mean, for me, I notice that if I have more than 1 cup of coffee a day, it's just way too much, and it messes with my energy, and I can feel my head kind of go off, and there's all kinds of antioxidants and stuff they say are beneficial with coffee. Again, I think this is kind of an individual approach, but I think the quality of the coffee matters and the dose. I have definitely tried going without coffee. I went 30 days without coffee. Not this past January, but the one before. And life just wasn't as fun. I think life is a little more fun when I have some coffee. I'm more productive and I'm happier, and I always have coffee before my workouts because it's a natural like pre-workout, gets me going, gets me pumped up. So that's a good time to have coffee, but never after 12, only 1 cup a day, never after a workout. Because it tends to make me feel like I've been overrun. So I think it's all about the dose and the quality. There's some really bad coffees out there, especially the way they're grown, grown with lots of toxins and things. So it all comes back to quality. Yeah,
Dave Asprey talks about mold in a lot of coffee types, and so you should be looking for trying to find coffee that most probably doesn't have any mold in it. Like he says, he claims that a lot of products have mold. And that
a lot of mycotoxins. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's quite important to take a look which coffee are you drinking. And I also was recommended not to drink coffee in airplanes because they don't clean the machines too thoroughly. So there could be also a lot of mold. I read that in some biohacking book because I'm also really obsessed with that topic. I love it. Yeah. You can sense that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's all about the quality and the dose, for sure.
Yeah. And another interesting tip, because you were talking about workouts, I know that I've read that Dan Bilzerian takes Cialis for, the erection optimizer drug before a workout, so that as a result he gets a better pump.
I haven't heard of that. That's an interesting thing. I mean, that could work. I haven't looked into it, but
Yeah.
it sounds interesting.
Yeah, because it's supposed to widen your vessels, and what works for your penis could also work for your bicep.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, it makes sense. Like putting your body in a aroused state, good, so it's ready to go fight and lift some weights and run fast. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So as a last question, I really thought like in this podcast, I always like look for like the number one question. I think, as you said, like I think the biggest thing we need is like we need the best immune system, and the best immune system is like we need the best gut health. I agree, this is like the central
Yeah.
thing where we can make a change. And what would be your best tips to optimize the gut and the gut bacteria?
Hmm. So the biggest thing is definitely changing the way you eat, and you have to stop eating the foods that are problematic to the gut, and those are largely gluten-containing grains, conventional dairies. All those have harmful proteins and industrial seed oils, so like toxic fats, safflower oil, like those have to stop. You can't do anything else. You can take all the probiotics you want. You can eat all the right foods, but if you're still eating the bad ones, it won't work. So you have to stop eating the bad ones, start eating the good ones, with a lot of collagen. But the other thing I recommend is just some good eating principles. Like there's a lot of basic things that I think people get wrong, like chewing your food. Is like super important to make sure you're absorbing the food and not chasing your food with liquids. So a lot of times people put food in their mouth and they chase the food with water or some other liquid. But what that does is it dilutes the natural gastric juices, the saliva that provide the acids to break down your food. So if you're not getting that, if you're not chewing your food well and using the natural production of that saliva, you won't digest your food as well, and it'll result in all kinds of issues down the road. So the quality of your eating is very important. The quality of your food is very important, and also breathing. Like most people are breathing in a very shallow state, so it's causing their body to be in a very stressed out, sympathetic fight or flight state. So what I encourage people to do is to really work on diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing in and out through the nose. Inhale, the belly should rise. Exhale, the belly should fall. Practice that and make that a normal everyday state. And that puts your body in the parasympathetic state where you can rest and digest your food. So we want to take these, like many people are just eating so fast and they're not chewing their food.
Yeah.
And they're very, very stressed out with their breathing. So they could eat all the good food they want, but they're not absorbing it very well. So those things all are connected in terms of the internal environment and how we relate to our food. Those are some very easy things, very simple things that can result in huge, huge changes.
All right. Thank you so much, Chad. That was a great conversation. I think we learned a lot from you. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
Awesome, Sven. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it. I look forward to coming back, man.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode of Svencast again.